Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be talking about something a little different. It's kind of
Mhm.
about money, but it's really more about life.
Yeah,
And we're going to be looking at this book, Die with Zero.
by Bill Perkins.
Yeah, have you heard of this one?
I have, yeah. It's a fascinating take on life and money.
It really is. It's
Yeah.
not really a typical financial advice book.
No, 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 no.
It's more about like how to use your money to actually live your best life.
Yeah, it's about maximizing experiences, not just your bank balance.
Exactly. And he has this really interesting concept called memory dividends.
Yeah, that's one of the core ideas of the book.
So, like, I think we've all had this, like, you go on an amazing vacation,
Yeah,
and then, like, years later, you're still kind of living off those memories.
absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you bring up those pictures, you tell those stories, and it's like you get to relive that experience a little bit.
Totally. And Perkins is saying that those memories, those are actually valuable.
They're like little boosts of happiness that you get long after the event itself.
It's like getting bonus enjoyment points or something.
That's a great way to put it. He actually quantifies enjoyment using experience points in the book.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's a really unique way to look at it.
And it's funny because Perkins himself, he's not like a typical self-help guru.
Right.
He's like an engineer and an energy trader,
Yeah, he actually made his fortune in the energy markets.
which is pretty cool. I think it makes his perspective even more interesting.
Absolutely. It's like
Yeah.
he's applying his analytical mind to this idea of how to live a fulfilling life.
Totally. So the book kind of starts off by like tackling this traditional idea of saving for retirement.
Right, that save, save, save mentality.
Yeah, which we're all kind of taught, you know.
We are. It's drilled into us from a young age.
But Perkins is basically saying that that can actually backfire.
Yeah, he argues that a lot of people end up dying with a ton of money left unspent.
Which, I mean, it makes you wonder what's the point of all that saving if you don't get to actually enjoy it?
Exactly. He points to the fact that the median net worth of Americans keeps rising even into their 70s.
It's like people are so focused on accumulating wealth that they forget to actually live their lives.
Yeah, it's a real problem.
It reminds me of my grandmother, actually.
Oh, yeah?
She was offered a $10,000 gift when she was like in her late 70s.
Wow.
And she flat out refused it. She was like, what am I going to do with that at my age?
That's a great example of how we can get so caught up in saving that we miss opportunities to enjoy life in the present.
Exactly. And Perkins also talks about this idea of like oversaving for healthcare.
Yeah, that's another big one.
You know, like people are so worried about medical bills that they pinch pennies their whole lives.
Right. And he points out that for most people, even a sizable nest egg won't cover catastrophic costs.
That's true. Like if you end up needing really expensive treatments, even $1 million might not be enough.
Exactly. And he suggests that long-term care insurance might actually be a more effective solution for that specific worry.
So it's about being more strategic with your finances throughout life instead of just stockpiling for some unknown future.
Right. It's about finding that balance between financial security and actually experiencing all that life has to offer.
I love that. But I'm sure some people would push back on this whole die with zero thing.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Like, what about people who genuinely enjoy saving or who feel anxious about spending down their wealth?
That's a valid concern. And Perkins acknowledges that everyone's relationship with money is different.
Okay, good.
He's not advocating for reckless spending, but for a more mindful allocation of resources.
So it's not about like going out and blowing all your money.
No, it's about being intentional with your spending and making sure that it aligns with your values and priorities.
I like that. And the core idea here is to shift our focus from financial returns to what he calls return on experience.
Yeah, that's the key.
It's like we're so used to thinking about ROI in terms of money. But he's saying we should also think about the return we get on our experiences.
Exactly. And research actually shows that experiences tend to bring more lasting happiness than material possessions.
Yeah, like that new car smell fades pretty quickly.
It does. But the memories of an amazing trip, those can last a lifetime.
Totally. And those memories become even more valuable when we factor in those memory dividends.
Right. That's where the real magic happens.
Okay, so let's talk more about these memory dividends.
Yeah, let's dive in.
I'm really intrigued by this idea, like how do experiences actually continue to pay off over time?
We'll think about it this way. When you invest in an experience, like let's say that Grand Canyon trip, you're not just buying a few days of fun. You're creating memories that will continue to bring you joy for years to come.
Okay, I'm following you.
Every time you show those pictures to friends, reminisce with your travel buddies, or even give advice based on your adventures, you're getting a little extra experience point payout.
It's like the gift that keeps on giving.
Exactly. Those memories become part of your story, and they enrich your life in ways that material possessions just can't.
But couldn't this focus on memory dividends lead to overspending? You know, like just trying to create those memories for the sake of it.
That's a valid concern, and Perkins definitely acknowledges that risk.
Okay, good.
He's not suggesting that we go into debt-chasing experiences.
Makes sense.
It's about finding that sweet spot between enjoying life now and being responsible with your finances.
It's like being mindful about our spending.
Exactly. Choosing experiences that truly resonate with us, rather than just trying to keep up with the Joneses.
I like that. And he actually uses two really interesting stories to illustrate this point.
Oh yeah, the story of Jason and John.
Tell me about them.
Well, Jason was a friend of his who took this incredible backpacking trip through Europe in his early 20s.
Sounds fun.
It was, but he actually had to borrow money from a loan shark to finance it.
Wow, that's commitment.
Right? Years later, Jason still considers that trip to be a priceless investment in his life.
Because of the memories.
Exactly. Those memories continue to enrich his life and shape his perspective.
That's awesome. But then there's John.
Yeah, John is kind of the cautionary tale.
What happened to him?
He became a billionaire by the time he was 38.
Wow, that's young.
It is, but he worked so much that he missed out on a lot of those valuable life experiences.
It's like the classic, making money to live but forgetting to actually live.
Exactly, and Perkins uses these stories to highlight the importance of finding that balance.
So it sounds like investing in experiences early on is a pretty smart move.
It is, especially given how those memories can continue to pay off over time.
But how do we know when's the right time to start really focusing on those experience points?
That's where Perkins introduces this concept of the net worth peak.
Okay, net worth peak. That's a new one. What is that all about?
It's a fascinating idea that really challenges the way we traditionally think about financial planning. Instead of constantly trying to grow our wealth, Perkins suggests that we should actually focus on reaching a point where we can strategically spend down those savings.
So it's not about hoarding wealth until the very end.
Not at all. It's about figuring out when we're in the best position to use that money to actually live a more fulfilling life.
Okay, I'm starting to see where he's going with this.
And the ideal time to start spending down those savings varies depending on your health lifestyle and the types of experiences you value.
So like a 50-year-old in great shape might have a much different timeline than someone who's less healthy at the same age.
Exactly. Their experience point timelines will look completely different.
This is really making me rethink how I view aging.
It's not just about getting older. It's about understanding how our capacity for enjoyment changes over time.
Yeah, that's a good point. But let's be realistic here. One of the biggest fears people have about this die with zero approach is running out of money before they die.
That's understandable. It's a valid concern.
I mean, nobody wants to end up broke and struggling in their later years.
Of course not. But Perkins offers some really interesting perspectives on this fear.
Okay, I'm curious to hear what he has to say.
He actually compares planning for medical care to buying alien robot invasion insurance.
Alien robot invasion insurance.
Right. It's his way of illustrating that we often over-prepare for unlikely events while neglecting to fully enjoy the present.
That's an interesting analogy.
He argues that no amount of savings can truly cover every possible medical expense.
Yeah, like if you have a major health crisis, it could wipe out your savings pretty quickly.
Exactly. He uses the example of cancer treatments, which can easily cost $500,000 a year.
So even if you've saved diligently, a major health event could derail your entire financial plan.
And he argues that for most people, agonizing over those potential medical costs just leads to unnecessary stress and deprivation.
It's like you're so worried about what might happen that you forget to live in the now.
Exactly. And he even suggests that long-term care insurance might be a more effective way to address those concerns.
Rather than just hoarding cash just in case.
Right. It's about being realistic about what you can control and focusing on living your best life today.
I like that. So it's about finding that balance between being prepared for the future and not letting fear dictate your present.
Exactly. That's the essence of the die with zero philosophy.
This has been really eye-opening. I'm starting to see how this whole approach can really shift your perspective on life and money.
It's definitely a thought-provoking book.
So what happens when we actually start thinking about spending down those savings?
Well, that's where things get really interesting, and that's what we'll be diving into in the next part of our deep dive.
Awesome. I can't wait to hear more.
Me too.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Die with Zero. We'll be back soon with more insights from this fascinating book. Stay tuned.
Sounds good.
All right, so we're back and ready to dig deeper into Die with Zero.
Yeah, let's pick up where we left off talking about actually spending down our savings.
Right, because that's where it gets real for a lot of people.
It does. It's one thing to talk about maximizing experiences.
But then there's that fear,
Yeah, totally. Like, what if I run out of money?
Exactly. What if I live longer than I expect or something unexpected happens?
Yeah, those are valid concerns.
Mm-hmm.
And Perkins addresses those head on in the book.
Okay, good. So how does he suggest we approach this whole spending down process?
Well, he's a big advocate for annuities.
Annuities, those are kind of controversial, aren't they?
They can be.
Yeah.
Yeah, some financial advisors love them, others not so much.
But Perkins seems to be pretty pro-annuity.
He is. And I think it makes sense within this whole die with zero framework.
Okay, I'm listening.
So with a traditional investment portfolio, you're always trying to balance growth with the fear of outliving your savings.
Right. You don't want to run out of money before you run out of life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're basically acting as your own insurance agent.
Trying to predict how long you'll live and how much money you'll need.
Right.
Mm.
Which is a pretty impossible task, let's be honest.
Totally. And that fear often leads to people oversaving and underspending.
Exactly. They're so worried about running out of money that they never really allow themselves to fully enjoy it.
So how do annuities fit into this?
Well, with an annuity, you're basically transferring that risk of longevity to the insurance company. They're the ones who have to worry about you living to 100.
So I can just relax and enjoy my money.
Pretty much. You're creating a steady stream of income that's guaranteed for life.
No matter how long I live.
Exactly. And that peace of mind allows you to spend more freely, knowing that your basic needs are covered.
It's like flipping the script on traditional retirement planning.
That's a great way to put it. Instead of clinging to those savings and worrying about making them last, you're actually able to enjoy them.
Okay, I'm starting to see the appeal. But I've also heard that annuities can have a lot of fees.
That's true. Some annuities do have high fees or hidden clauses that can eat into your returns.
So how do you find an annuity that's actually a good fit for this Die with Zero plan?
That's where working with a fee-only financial advisor who understands this philosophy is really important.
So someone who's not just pushing the traditional accumulate as much wealth as possible approach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You want someone who gets this whole idea of maximizing experiences and can help you navigate the complexities of annuities.
That makes sense. So finding the right advisor is key.
It is. They can help you understand the different types of annuities, explain the fees, and create a plan that aligns with your specific goals.
All right, so annuities might be a good option for some people.
Yeah, they can be a valuable tool.
But I'm still curious about this whole idea of the net worth peak.
Oh yeah, let's talk more about that.
Like, is there a specific age or time frame that Perkins recommends for reaching that peak?
He actually challenges us to think of our net worth peak not as a specific dollar amount, but as a date.
As a date,
That's interesting.
because it's not just about how much money you have, but about when you're most likely to be able to enjoy those experiences to the fullest.
So like if you're in great health at 50,
Mm.
you might have more time to enjoy those experiences than someone who's less healthy at the same age.
Exactly. And he argues that for most people, the ideal time to start spending down savings is somewhere between 45 and 60. So it's not about waiting until traditional retirement age.
Not necessarily. It's about recognizing when you're most likely to reap the greatest rewards from those experiences.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about people who are already past that age range? Like, is it too late for them to embrace this Die with Zero philosophy?
It's never too late to start living a more fulfilling life.
That's good to hear.
The key is to be present and intentional about how you spend your time and resources, regardless of your age.
So even if you're in your 70s or 80s, you can still find ways to maximize those experience points.
Absolutely. It might mean adjusting your time buckets and choosing experiences that are more accessible or meaningful at that stage of life.
It's like recognizing that every chapter of life has its own unique beauty and potential for adventure.
Beautifully put. And it's a reminder that maximizing life experiences isn't just about spending money, but about making choices that create lasting memories and minimize regret.
Speaking of minimizing regret, Perkins also talks a lot about the emotional side of maximizing life experiences.
He does. He highlights research showing that people often regret not having lived more authentically, not having pursued their passions, and not having spent enough quality time with loved ones.
Yeah, those are definitely things I think about sometimes.
It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and lose sight of what truly matters.
Totally. So how do we make sure that we're not looking back with a bunch of regrets?
Perkins encourages us to be more deliberate about how we spend our time and energy, making sure that we're investing in experiences that align with our values and bring us lasting joy.
It's about living a life that's true to ourselves.
Exactly. And he also talks about using those time buckets to map out those experiences throughout our lives.
Right. Those time buckets can be a really valuable tool for planning those meaningful moments. But sometimes it's not just about planning. It's about having the courage to actually take those leaps of faith, to be bold in pursuing our dreams. And that's something Perkins addresses as well, right?
He does. He encourages us to be bold, but not foolish,
Hmm.
especially earlier in life when we have more time to recover from setbacks.
Okay. I'm really intrigued by this idea. What exactly does he mean by bold but not foolish? And how does it fit into this whole die with zero philosophy? Bold but not foolish. It sounds kind of exciting, but also a little scary.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance.
Like, what does that actually look like, in everyday life?
Well, Perkins says boldness doesn't always have to be these huge, grand gestures.
Okay.
It could be something as simple as finally signing up for that pottery class you've been thinking about,
Oh, yeah.
or starting that side hustle you're passionate about,
Hmm.
or even having that difficult conversation you've been putting off.
That's true.
Hmm.
It's about pushing yourself outside your comfort zone.
Exactly, even if it's just a little bit.
Because sometimes the scariest thing is not taking any risks at all.
Yeah, you might think you're playing it safe, but you could be missing out on some amazing experiences.
And Perkins actually shares a pretty personal story about this.
He does. He talks about getting fired from a junior trader position when he was only 23.
Oh, wow. That must have been tough.
It was.
Hmm.
But he says it was a valuable learning experience.
How so?
Well, it forced him to reevaluate his path and ultimately led him to even greater opportunities.
So sometimes setbacks can be blessings in disguise.
Exactly. They can push us in a direction we never would have considered otherwise.
That's a good reminder. And he also encourages people to be open to relocating for career opportunities,
Yeah, he challenges that idea that we need to stay rooted in one place.
especially when we're younger.
Right, when you have more flexibility and time to bounce back if things don't work out.
It's like the cost of staying put could be greater than the cost of moving.
Exactly, both financially and in terms of missed experiences.
So it's about weighing those potential rewards against the risks.
And recognizing that fear can often distort our perception of the downside.
It's like we build these worst-case scenarios in our heads.
And sometimes those scenarios are way more dramatic than reality.
Yeah, we can be our own worst enemies sometimes.
Perkins says it's important to have a realistic perspective on risk.
And to remember that the potential rewards can often outweigh the perceived downsides.
Right, and he also talks about his own experience moving to Texas to become a trader when he was 25.
That was a big move.
It was. But it turned out to be a really successful one.
Both financially and in terms of the experiences he had.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He met new people, had new adventures, and really expanded his horizons.
It's inspiring to hear how taking those leaps of faith can lead to such fulfilling outcomes.
It is. But I know it can be tough to overcome that fear.
Yeah, fear can be paralyzing.
So Perkins suggests we try to quantify our fears.
Quantify them, like put a number on them.
Yeah, he asks, how much is this fear costing me?
Both in terms of money and missed opportunities.
Exactly. It's a way to make those fears more concrete
Hmm.
and to assess whether they're really worth the cost.
That's a really interesting approach. I like that.
It's about recognizing that fear can hold us back from living our best lives.
And that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is face those fears head on.
Perkins reminds us that we often have more support systems than we realize,
Yeah.
from family and friends to social safety nets, and that the worst-case scenario is often far less dire than we imagine.
It's about having a healthy perspective on risk.
Exactly, and recognizing that the potential rewards can be truly life-changing.
So it's about having the courage to step outside our comfort zones.
And to trust that we have the resilience to handle whatever challenges come our way.
And Perkins also emphasizes that this boldness isn't just about personal gain.
Right.
It's also about using our resources and our courage to make a positive impact on the world around us.
Exactly. It's about living a life of purpose and intention.
A life that's filled with experiences, generosity, and a willingness to embrace the unknown.
That's beautifully said.
This has been such an insightful conversation about Die with Zero.
It really has. It's given me a lot to think about.
Me too. What are your biggest takeaways from this deep dive?
For me, it's a reminder that life is short and precious, and that we should make the most of every moment.
I agree. And that we shouldn't be afraid to take risks, to chase our dreams, and to live a life that's true to ourselves.
Absolutely. Those are the things that will ultimately bring us the most happiness and fulfillment.
Well said. And for our listeners out there who are intrigued by these ideas, I highly recommend checking out Die with Zero by Bill Perkins.
It's a really thought-provoking book that could change the way you view life and money.
It definitely has for me. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Die with Zero. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep living those experience points.
Sounds good.